And like I would say, the white race, when your people first got here, they didn't have these cameras and televisions and jet airplanes and air conditions and Howard Johnsons and Holiday Inns and Americana and Hilton hotels. They had to fight the Indians, watch their daughters raped and scabbed.
All right, welcome back to the channel, pointing out politics. In this video, I wanted to share something with you that I came across. I had never seen this before, and it was a video of Muhammad Ali on the Dick Cavett show, and you get to see a little more insight, just a little more insight into his personality, and hear firsthand some of the thoughts that he had about his situation at the time. This took place after he stopped boxing, and he was going through the process, the court, finding out whether or not he was going to go to jail, whether he'd be convicted, what the situation was going to be regarding his refusal to be drafted into the military. So I want to play this for you. I'll offer my commentary on this, the couple of thoughts that I have, and I'd really like to hear what you have to say, not just about the video, but also about my comments. Let me know if I'm crazy on some things. And if I am, maybe point me back in the right direction. So in any case, here we go. Let's check this out.
Muhammad, what do you do these days now? It seems I've sometimes wondered what you're doing.
It's really strange. I'm actually more busy now than I was boxing, because at the time I was boxing, I had to go in training for like 3 months before a fight.
Yeah.
And like immediately after a fight, I was signing for another one, and I was like on the streets for like 3 weeks, and then I was back in training. And I fought as much as 3 and 4 times a year, and training 3 months each fight. I was mostly in camp. Mm-hmm. But I'm more busy now than I was, more active in the ring. For an example, I was in Pittsburgh yesterday and toured about 3 black high schools in one day, encouraging the youth. A lot of gang wars are going on. They're shooting each other and sniping at each other on the streets. And the principals mentioned that with the things that I have done and sacrifices I have made, I'm about one of the few people that they might listen to. So
It's right there. One of the first things that jumped out to me was how much sense that makes. You're someone who is a prominent figure in a community, right? And some of the youth would probably listen too. But to take that and then turn it around and use it as a positive tool to help the youth in the community, I think is a pretty awesome thing. I would contrast that with what we see now. What do you see now happening with leadership, with people who are idolized, looked up to? What example is being set? In terms of Muhammad Ali, there were some things that I may have agreed with, some things I may have disagreed with. It's hard to say what I would have been thinking had I been in his position at that time, in those years. But I think it's a pretty interesting dynamic, and this is something that I had never seen before.
And they did listen, and a couple of the gangs got together, and we had a little secret meeting, and they shook each other's hand and said they're going to try to stop fighting and shooting. A lot of them are taking dope, and a lot of the girls are going into prostitution. And we went to the schools, we talked with the various groups, and we had a good time. And I'm on a college tour also, and my agent, Richard Fulton here in New York, says that look like we're going to be booked for another 2 years in the colleges. And I'm also franchising about 500 restaurants called Champ Burgers. We have 5 of them in the Miami area.
Champ Burgers?
Champ Burgers, right. And we're negotiating on about 10 more buildings in Georgia, and we're coming up here and all over the country. And also Random House will be coming out soon with my life autobiography. About 4 more months, so I'll stay pretty busy.
It's kind of weird just hearing this, because I never really pictured that, thought about it like that. In terms of outside the ring, most of what you see or what I had seen or heard about regarding Muhammad Ali up to this point was all protest, basically. Fight the system, fight the power type of thing. Right, you almost never really heard of him in any context outside of this. But this is a young man who is business minded, and like the restaurant thing, never heard of that before. I think that's pretty cool.
That's pretty good. Is there any? Oh, how do you stand now with the possibility of going to jail?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just waiting any day now.
Do you think about? Do you think about that though? Do you ever think what you'll do if you?
Well, yes,
go?
you think about it at nights when you're in the bed. You think about, if I went this way, what could have happened if I went this way, and I've figured it all out.
Yeah.
No people gain freedom until some have to die, some lose their wealth, some give up money. And like I would say, the white race, when your people first got here, they didn't have these cameras and televisions and jet airplanes and air conditions and Howard Johnsons and Holiday Inns and Americana and Hilton hotels. They had to fight the Indians, watch their daughters raped and scabbed. Took 6 months to go from here to Los Angeles. Now you can do it in 3.5 hours. But nevertheless, they kept fighting and cutting down the trees. And they didn't see this, but they made a way for the present whites to rule. And
That right there is highly interesting to me. He says they made a way for the present white man to rule. It's interesting in the fact that, and a lot of people think that way, but it's interesting in the fact that he seems to think, or he's presenting the white race, quote unquote, white race, as a monolith, kind of how we often talk about the black race as a monolith. But what you would consider the white race at that point is made up of so many different groups of people from so many different nations, different nationalities, right? Yeah, their skin is of the lighter hue, but they're not the same. Just it's the same way with black people. Our skin may all be of a darker hue, but we all are not the same, and we all don't think the same, and we all don't have the same life experiences, and there's interactions among people, even within these groups. Everything's not peachy keen just because someone shares the same skin tone. So I think that's pretty fascinating. When he talks about the white people that rule, which white people is it that he's referring to that are ruling? If you look at present day in the United States and you look at politics, we have that dynamic between black and white. And if somebody said, well, the white man, this, which white man are you talking about? And truth be told, you can have two white men from the same ethnic background who live in two different conditions, two different states, which is the same is true for a black man in America. It has more to do with than just the skin tone. It has a lot to do with the class and the status and the connections. And I mean, it just goes so deep. And it's interesting how it's just broken down. It's almost like it's a black-white issue. It's simplified to that point. That is interesting.
Japanese in World War II, they had these flights called suicide missions. They knew they would die, but they ran that plane, right? His life meant nothing when it came to the freedom of his daughter, his son, the future of his nation. And I would say, like, the astronauts, 3 white astronauts almost got stranded in space, and their wives were waiting, and the children were worried because they could have been out there now, still in orbit.
Yeah.
But for the progress of white America in space, 8 astronauts died on the ground, and 3 almost not got back. But whenever people want to really make progress, some have to sacrifice a lot. And I like to say, white America right now is spending $30 million a day in Asia. Black and white boys are dying unjustly for nothing just to free somebody else. So why should I worry about going to little old jail to free my poor people who's been catching hell here for 400 years?
All right, so at that point, let's provide a little bit of context. Again, this was when Muhammad Ali was about to go to jail. And you can imagine how that is, wondering when someone's going to show up at your door to cart you off to prison. But let's read. Muhammad Ali protested the Vietnam War by refusing induction into the U.S. Army in 1967, citing his religious belief as a Muslim and his objection to the war's injustice. This stand led to his arrest, a conviction for draft evasion, the stripping of his heavyweight boxing title, and a suspension from the sport for several years. His refusal made him a prominent figure in the anti-war and civil rights um, movements. So let's talk about that for a second, because there's a couple different components there, and I'd love to hear your viewpoints on this. Religious beliefs. Um, that would fall along the line of someone being a conscientious objector, right? They don't believe in going to war. There was a movie out recently about a man who refused to carry a weapon. So he became a medic. I can't think of the name of the movie right now. He ended up becoming, a hero, a war hero, and never really carried a weapon. So I haven't seen the movie yet, but I saw the previews. I know a little bit about the story. I want to check that out. But what are your thoughts on conscientious objection? And does it look different now than it did back in the 60s? If you think about the Vietnam War and somebody objected, I mean, for all intents and purposes, that war was a meat grinder, right? So if somebody was a conscientious objector, a lot of people would say, hey, well, he's just scared, he's a coward or whatever like that. He refuses to just give up his life, sacrifice his life in the defense / non-defense of this country, because we're not talking about defending the United States or our allies, really. We're talking about going over to some foreign land in the background of the war, which you really don't know what the truth is. Kind of like what happened with Desert Storm. One thing was said, but the difference was it really about that? The I think the key difference here was Desert Storm wasn't a meat grinder. Okay, we didn't lose tons and tons of American lives. But what are your thoughts on a conscious objector? Is that a valid reason? Should people be able to object conscientiously? Should somebody go to jail for that? Do you think that's right? Should your religious beliefs be enough to allow you to avoid a war? And in that vein, if you don't think a war is just, should you be able to say, well, I don't believe in this? Because we have a highly divided country right now, right? We have a situation in which you have your solid left, your solid right. I'm sure there's more people in the middle than we believe. But what happens when things start to lean one side, one way, and it's opposite than the way that you believe? And that leads to a war. And it's a war for something that you completely disagree with, you don't believe in. Is the fact that you disagree with that as a man enough to say, I don't want to play that game? And while we're on that subject, I mean, the draft in and of itself, do you think that's still a valid idea? Do you think it's still necessary? Should we use it only in cases of actual defense of the homeland? Or could it be used to send people to a foreign land to fight the war? Nowadays, who should get drafted? Everybody's equal, right? So should women be drafted? Or should it still be just the men? I mean, so much has changed since this time frame when Muhammad Ali was in this position. Do you think that things should have gone the way they did for him? Do you think these things should still be in place today? What are your thoughts about that whole dynamic? And then lastly, that last part of that, when he was suspended, lost a lot of money, lost his career for the most part. It was a struggle coming back. Should that have been part of it? Do you make that part of it? Okay, so if somebody is charged with a crime and they're convicted of it, should their livelihood be part of that package? This is a straight up question. I really like to know what you think about it. Kind of like with Michael Vick with the incident with the dogs and things of that nature. Should a man be stripped of his ability to earn an income based on something, or should he just have to pay for the crime that was committed, and you leave the rest of it out of it? Let me know your thoughts.
And it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to put a
Are you
black.
asking me for an answer to that?
It's kind of hard to put a black man, any black person in this country in jail, because if you ask the average one, we're already in jail. You know, we've been in jail 400 years.
How does the subject changed so many times in that long sentence that I'm going to talk for a second now. That I really don't know how that connects with Howard Johnson's and everything, but it's a terrifically long harangue there that you did. Do you feel bitter toward the entire white race? Do you think there's something about whiteness that is evil?
No, sir. No, sir. Whatever white people do as far as evil or as far as mistreatment, is just the nature of the white race to be this way. If we check history,
do you think it might be human nature?
Yes, just human nature to kill. If white people,
human nature, not
I watch
just
television. If there's not a movie of white people shooting white people in shootouts and cowboy pictures, they're shooting Indians. If they're not shooting Indians, they shoot Negroes. If they're not doing that, they're shooting reindeers or elephants or killing something. Just got to shoot. It's the system.
That was a weird exchange. Did you catch what happened there? He said that Muhammad Ali said it was white nature, and then the human nature was mentioned, and then he said it's human nature. So which is it? Is it white nature or is it human nature? Or do all white people have that in their nature, and are all black people absolved from that?
It's built on war.
Now let me ask you this. Do you think if it had happened the other way around, for some reason in what's the word, evolution, if the genes and the pigments had happened to work some other way, and if the nation of Africa, if the continent of Africa had developed the kind of civilization that ours has, is it possible that what I'm trying to say is there something intrinsically, I know this is part of the Muslim point, I assume, the black Muslim point, that there's something intrinsically
I'm just talking about history.
aggressive about white nature that there isn't about black.
No religious point. What I'm telling you is in history books, in your own books about this. I have a book called 100 Years
Oh, sure,
of
I know.
Lynching. So I'm not bringing up religion or nothing. This is just a fact that the world knows, you know. But I would say that just the nature, from what I see of darker people, is peace. I say like the Japanese seem to be a peaceful people until somebody else came over dictating and trying to rule them. The Hawaiians, they'd be on the beach doing their little dance. The Indian was building his whatever teepee or whatever you call it. The African was somewhere doing his little dance. These people have never tried to go to other planets or enslave other people or take over countries.
That is fascinating to me. When you hear that, you know, does that sound plausible to you? Does that sound believable? Is it just white people that have sought to conquer other peoples, around the globe? Or was there this thing called the Ottoman Empire at one time, where that spread rampant around the globe? Did China? How was that country consolidated into what it is today? Wasn't there some guy named Genghis Khan? It's just funny to me how I hear that trope all the time about it's the white man is the warmonger, always looking to conquer other peoples, but groups of people in their own areas, their own environment. There's always been a war. If there was no other to war against, then folks war amongst themselves. That's what they do. If in his example, he's talking about white people, Europeans, is what he's talking about. But before there was Europeans in Africa, and before there were Europeans and the Americans, there were Europeans slaughtering each other in Europe at the same time as Africans slaughtering each other in Africa, and Asians slaughtering each other in Asia, and Americans, people who were here slaughtering each other in America. It's human nature. That's what humans do. they go to war, unless, of course, you bow down to them and accept their rule over you, which is human nature to resist, and therefore you have a war. So I think that's kind of fascinating. But I remember hearing this a lot in my youth, that exactly what Muhammad Ali said. And there's a lot of people who think this way, and they carry that thought with them to the voting booth as well. It's ingrained in all of their processes. Let's continue.
Actually, that isn't true. If you took, for example, no, let me just, I don't want to get in an argument with you, but Tahiti, for example, is always used as an example of the paradise that the white man came and destroyed. But if you look into the history of when, I'm an expert because I just read a book about it, Captain Cook, but that supposedly peaceful paradise where people did nothing but pluck breadfruit off the trees and make love and had no disease until the white man got there, actually had a number of unpleasant aspects to it, like the fact that they strangled infants at birth to keep the population down, that there were live human sacrifices. So I know that there have been outrageous injustices against the black people in this country, but it doesn't really get us very far to talk about something as if the white man were some sort of intrinsic devil that no other race is.
You're right. What you said was the truth. The thing that you all have done to us is worse than the devil you told us about under the ground.
How would you like it if I were to lead into a commercial now?
I tell you, that is that's an interesting exchange there. And then he says, the things you've done to us are worse than the devil under the ground. I wonder if that is still the popular sentiment today. From what I see on social media, it looks like a lot of people feel that way. I think maybe a lot more than actually do. It's just the ones that feel that way have the larger mouths. They're louder, and they send it out there. But one thing about this interview here that I really like is you can definitely see a difference in the demeanor, the dignity, the respect that's shown between the participants and the audience. It's just a totally different vibe than you get nowadays. Nobody's really cutting each other off or not letting the other person speak. So I think that's pretty cool. This was definitely interesting.
Whatever you want to say, but when you say
After
devil,
this message
you're right.
from our local stations, we'll return.
Wow. Well, let me know your thoughts on that in the comment section below. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care of yourself. Peace.